the next chart. Yeah. So by seeing this, approximately, because of daylight saving time, this changes. But at sunrise, it's approximately 6 a.m., noon. So every house is about 2 hours. And then the Placidius houses, every house is the house cusp is exactly where the ascendant would be 2 hours later. So 1 second. Each house is a 2-hour period. They're not even. They're not equal because the Earth and its orbit aren't circles. They're ellipses. So they fluctuate a bit from perfect circles. But when you know what time you're born at and you do your chart, your quick visual check is to make sure your sun's in the right approximate time for where it would be on this house dial. So if you're born in the morning between midnight and sunrise, you can expect the sun to be, if you're born between midnight and 2 a.m., it'd be in the third house, 2 and 4 be the second house. Now it fluctuates because of equal time. They can be a bit varied. This is just a general standard, but you can generally see about where your sun's supposed to be based on the time you were born. Standard time, not daylight saving time. So you sort of try to work it. You get a rough idea so you can see if the chart's way off or not. So if you're born at 6 a.m. and you have your sun in your chart over in the 8th or 9th house, something's wrong. You entered something wrong on the computer or you calculated something wrong. So it's just a way of thinking and working through the, well, it's just a usefulness in looking at a chart. You always check, where's the sun, what time about is it in the day? And once you got the time of day, you got a more like, okay, you have a little more confidence in the chart. It's that lined up better. This will come a lot more useful later. But so even though we can see this cycle very clearly in the day, at any moment, I'm going back to the first chart, at any moment, there's the highest point in the sky. As we look south, there's the highest point of the zodiac in the sky, and there's the lowest point underneath us. That's the midheaven is the highest point. The IC is the lowest point. On the east, on the horizon, is the rising sign. On the west, the descending sign. So at any moment, there's still an ascendant. There's 12 houses at any moment. It's just where the sun is. It's like a clock. It tells you what time of day it is by where the sun is. Okay. So when we're looking at any cycle, we're trying to understand any cycle, whether it's the year, the day, a moon phase, an aspect cycle, there's always two extremes that stand out. Always notice the two extremes. In the seasons of the year, it was the longest day and the longest night in the orbit. And so the longest day and the longest night, the brightest and darkest day of the year. And everything works from the darkest day, it gets brighter, 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 and then from the brightest day, it gets darker, darker, darker. So we would see that in the signs of the zodiac. Same is true when we're looking at the houses. There's going to be a brightest time and a darkest time. It's pretty simple. The brightest time of the day, it's noon. The darkest time of day is midnight. And that's the beginning foundation of understanding the houses, although it will change to not only just be to understand the way the houses work, we do it by the light and the dark. But there's times when we're looking at different times, the sun could be in different places. It could be all different times, but there's still going to be the highest point in your chart, the lowest point, the rising sign, the setting sign. They'll be there regardless, but when we're understanding how it works, we have to understand it by the time of day and how we observe and experience the light and the darkness in a day. So to start with, we have the highest point, the MC, the lowest point, the IC, and we have half of the sky is rising. So we're standing on the earth and half of the sky is coming up from the point underneath us to the point highest up above us. That half of the sky is rising. In the northern hemisphere, we look south to see the sun. We look to the south and the sun rises on our left and it comes up to be almost right overhead as we're looking south. So it moves from left to right, that clockwise movement. If you were in the southern hemisphere, the sun rises on your right and comes up to the highest point. It's working the other way. It's like someone, yeah, it's just works the other way in the southern hemisphere, but we're just going to work on the northern hemisphere for now. Same logic, but the rising half, so the half of the sky that's rising, and there's a half that's setting. These are our two yin and yang, or our two basic factors for the signs, for the houses. And now, what does it mean? How does it work? Like, what happens? We see the phenomena. This is not theory. We're observing a phenomena of daylight increasing, the light rising, and the light setting, of it getting brighter and it getting darker. So that's the geometry or the DNA of it. But how do we experience this? Well, usually we're asleep when it's dark, when the sun's at its lowest point. Usually, technically, it's the darkest time. We're sleeping to get through the dark time, or we're quiet. We're not running around doing things. It's too dark out. We fall over things. It's dark. So we're receptive. We're in our sleep. We're almost in our unconscious. But from that point, we begin to start stirring. We don't wake up. We sleep, and then sooner or later, somewhere along here, we're going to wake up. We're going to look at this. We're going to look up. We're going to wake up, get ourselves together to get out into the world, and then we're going to go out and do something with the day. Go out to our jobs, get something done then it's till lunchtime. So from midnight to noon, that first half of the day is the rising half. It's the got to get up. I got to see what I can do. I got to make something happen. I got to go do this. We all got our list of things we got to do, but the physical thing is out of unconsciousness, out of sleep, out of our depth. As it gets brighter, we become more active. And our consciousness goes out into the world more, and we're interacting more and more with it and trying to do more. So the more light there is, the more active we are. So from the inactivity of midnight to the peak activity at noon, this is the rising half of the day. So when we want to look at when we look at the other half, once we get to, by the time we get to noon, we have our lunch. Most businesses, you get the most work done when you first get the job. You get everything done in the morning as best you can before everyone else starts coming in and interacting you and causing reactions and either dissipating us or taking our time, or we get the rush to see what we can get done till noon. Then we start interacting with others more. Other people start affecting us more. The situation starts affecting us. So after we've reached the high point, the brightest point of the day, the light's getting darker, and we're almost preparing for when it's going to be darkness again at sunset. We're trying to see, when do we get out of work? When do we finish the school? When do we get out of that? When do we get home? When do we have supper? When can we get back, relax, just have some time of our own, and when we get back to sleep and feel secure? So the setting side really is a very different process than the rising side. So the interesting, when you're born, and this is it's like the AM hours and the PM hours. At the edges, because of daylight saving time, it can be blurred a little bit. Basically, AM hours and PM hours. If you're born with the sun rising, that's the next. Oh yeah, okay. So this rising side and the setting side, it's divided by this one line. The line from the highest point in the sky and the lowest point beneath us. So this highest point in the sky, the point right over the zodiac highest in the sky, almost right overhead, the point beneath us, this line between us is called, between these 2 points, called like the line of power. It's a line of power, because everything starts from this line of power. So the day starts at midnight and the daylight increases till it gets to noon. By noon, you're at the peak of the day and it begins to set. So there's this a setting phase that starts at the midheaven, when the sun's at the midheaven. There's a rising phase that starts at the greatest darkness at midnight and rises up. So there's a tremendous power inherent in these two extreme moments of the cycle, the yin and the yang. So in the zodiac, when we did the zodiac, we had freedom and responsibility, the freedom of the Gemini, the social responsibility and involvement of the Sagittarius, and how they were, and shifting into Cancer and Capricorn. These points were very powerful points in the zodiac, points of freedom and responsibility. Here we're dealing with house. We're not dealing with freedom and responsibility. We're dealing with the outer world and how bright and active it can be, and what's happening inside of ourselves, the deepest points within ourselves. So that there's a power within at the IC, and there's a power without at the MC. So depending on the power within and what motivates you and where you're holding yourself together within, that's going to determine, as you wake up, what you're going to be trying to do and make happen across the day. And trying to get out, whether you're going out with a good attitude, bad attitude, whether you got something you want to do, or whether if you got a negative attitude, you're going to project that negative attitude out. And from whatever you project, you'll get the results. You'll start to see the result of it by the time you get to up to the midheaven, the time the sun gets up to the midheaven. Once you see the results of what you've accomplished, good or bad, or not accomplishing anything, or you're too wasted or whatever, then everybody notices it, and you see who's working, who's not, who's got status, who's got respect, who doesn't at the midheaven. Then everyone starts responding about that, and your world starts spinning around everyone's reactions to what you've accomplished or not accomplished. And you start measuring and reflecting on who you are against that interaction. So if you do good things, you get good feedback. If you do bad things, you get bad feedback. So what you put out will come back. We put out energy. Half of our life, half of our nature is to put out energy. Half is to look for the feedback, to get the feedback and to take it back in. When we get good feedback, we really feel good about ourselves. And we get really powerful in ourselves. We feel we're really confident. When we don't get good feedback, we get really inconfident, insecure, sick. So many things happen to us in our reaction to that negative feedback. Same way with students, kids studying. They go out to do it, and if they've done the work and they're going with it with a positive attitude to get things done, if they don't get much done, they're not going to get good feedback, and they're going to get more and more negative or difficult feedback, and it's going to come and affect their personal world again. So this deep point within ourselves, the deepest point in our psyche, is the IC. The highest point out in the world is the MC, and this is called the line of power, the 2 points of power. And half the sky rises and half the sky sets based on that. Okay, we're going to be going over this a little bit, just to repetition. So what happens is, as we're rising, the rising half of our chart, and the rising half of the sky is the instigating half. I'm motivated, I'm coming from my home or my place, and I'm pushing to make something happen. The light's increasing, I'm instigating, I'm forcing things, I'm instigating things to see what I can get done. Or if I'm negative, I'm instigating negative attitudes and putting them out and see how they affect people. So we come from our sleep, we go out and see who we can affect, what we can do, what we can accomplish, and how much we can do. So half of the world we're instigating. The rising half of our chart is the instigating half of our chart. So if you're born in the AM, your Sun and Mercury and Venus are all going to mostly going to be rising, and you're going to be by nature an instigating person. It's a simple thing. It's very powerful insight into a person's behavior. So this is instigating things and making things happen. I got to go make something happen. I got to do this. Or you go, I don't feel like doing anything. I got to do this. It's a whole, but you're still going to affect the people you run into in that day. As you come out of your own self, you're going to have effect out. So if something bad happens out in the world and you feel blame for it, you get guilt for it, you feel bad in yourself, you try and sleep, you don't sleep well, you get up the next day, you're still feeling bad, you're going to be diminishing anything you're doing for that day, and you're putting it out, and as you're putting out the diminished effort or the negative effort, that negativity is going to affect other people as well. And that's going to limit how much you can accomplish. Or it's going to create other problems that will take time to fix, which diminishes, again, how much you can instigate, how clear it works. So this rising side of your chart is the instigative side. So you got to be looking at your chart saying, oh, it's like, is my sun rising? You know, you check to see if the sun's rising. So we'll do this, eventually we do this for each planet. We start to interpret each planet against this. Is it rising or isn't it? But that's the rising up. The Setting half is the reactive half.